Hi, this is Kate from That Crazy Kate, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you today about domestic violence and give you a little bit of education. Um, I know I see this a lot of times in my work that there's people who get really frustrated when women don't leave their abusive relationships, and they get really frustrated because they don't understand and they just don't see why the woman can't just leave. I mean, it's just so easy. Why doesn't she just leave, right? And basically, what we know now about domestic violence is that leaving a domestic violence relationship, the actual breaking up, the actual leaving of a domestic violence relationship is the most dangerous time for a woman because she is breaking the isolation, she's breaking the control. And if a man feels like he's lost control of, his possession, that's the most dangerous time for her because he is going to freak out. He's going to go crazier than he was. And then if they do get back together, if they do resolve their issues and they decide that they want to try one more time, things might be okay in the beginning because they're in what's known as the honeymoon phase of domestic violence. And it's just, things are great. I promise things are going to be different, baby, blah, 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 blah. And then what happens is this entire time, the tension is building and building and building and building and building. And then there's a huge explosion. So I get really frustrated when I hear people say, why won't she just leave? Especially in my job with being involved with child safety, why won't she just leave? Doesn't she understand what's at risk? Well, she does understand what's at risk, and that's why she won't leave. Another thing that's really important to consider when dealing with women who've been in these situations is a lot of times, people don't believe the woman. They don't really think that it's as bad as the woman says, or maybe they think she's exaggerating, or, like in my case, my abuser was so likable and so charismatic. No one would ever, I think to this day, people probably still think that it's all a lie, that I'm making it all up. And, if it wasn't for the fact that he had done it to another woman before me, I think that people would probably just think I was making this whole thing up. And it's really sad because women face this every day, especially if they are with men who have a little bit of power, or men who, like my ex-boyfriend, were really, really charismatic and really easy to talk to and really good guy, quote, good guys, like that's something that they're dealing with. And they have to understand that, if I leave and label this guy an abuser, then everyone's going to be looking at me like I'm the jerk because I'm, making him out to be this terrible person and I'm ruining his character and just all this kind of stuff. Another thing to consider regarding women who are trying to leave their domestic violence relationships, which is something that I mentioned prior, sometimes they come crawling back. Sometimes, they want to try and work it out. And in my situation in particular, my ex-boyfriend showed up at my work and he was bringing me flowers and he looked awful. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. And that's like, he was a firefighter, so he always looked like he hadn't slept in days, but he literally looked like death because like I had upset him so much. I had like disrupted his life so much that he literally looked like death. And, he was really nice and bringing me flowers and, telling me it was going to change. And, he would say, if you keep living in the past, then, we can't move forward and, you have to just let this stuff go. And I treated you terribly, but it's going to be better and blah, 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 blah. And then once he kind of realized that I wasn't coming back and that I was like, yeah, okay, I don't believe you because, things haven't changed for almost 3 years. Why are they going to change now? And it did take me a long time to get to that point, by the way. He went crazy. He was like running me off the road and like following me to the police station, and he followed me to one of my new boyfriend's house, and like actually a gate came down on his truck and he broke the gate trying to get into this gated community. And it was a constant battle. It was like constantly I was running from him. I couldn't go to clubs. I couldn't go to, my girlfriend's house because, he knew where my girlfriends lived. And then I couldn't go to my new person's house because, you know, he knew where he would follow me to where they lived and he would wait for me at school. And it was just a fiasco. It was like, this is almost worse than just being with him. Like him chasing me and stalking me and following me and blowing up my phone and getting my new phone number from somebody else and blowing up my phone again is like more stressful than if I had just stayed with him and put up with him abusing me constantly and belittling me and calling me fat and calling me ugly and calling me garbage. Like that would have been so much easier than this, you know? And I think that's something that people just don't really think about. Like it is absolutely the most dangerous time. Like I cannot stress that to you enough, seriously. So some advice that I'd like to give, just because, you know, this is something that's so close to my heart because, you know, I went through it, my mom went through it, my mother-in-law went through it. I have a bunch of friends who've been in domestic violence situations and I do it for a living. I might have already said that. I just wanted to give some advice. If you know someone who is in a situation, or if you are in the situation yourself, one of the most important things you can do is find some really trustworthy supports. So one of the most important things that you can do is really find someone that you trust. Really find some really good supports. It can be family. You know, in my case, I lived far away from my family and I was too ashamed to tell them. So I had a few close friends who helped me through it. My best friend, who's been my best friend forever. I mean, she was always there for me. She always listened to me. She always would just like let me come and cry and come pick me up if I was scared or whatever. And then I had another girlfriend who I kind of lost touch with over the years, but she actually took me to get my domestic violence injunction because I was so scared. And she was like, get in the car, let's go. So that's just something you want to really think about, especially in domestic violence situations. Sometimes you get in these kind of relationships with people that are very isolated. And in my case, and I keep using my case because I can speak on it personally, you know, it was a family of firefighters. He had a big Italian family. He lived really close to his grandparents. You know, the firefighters were all like brothers, like literally like brothers. Their wives were all friends. Their kids all were friends. So I was only friends with those people. Well, obviously, not that those people were bad people, because they weren't, but I couldn't go to them because, you know, they weren't going to help me. They were just going to be like, oh, you know, why don't you try and work it out? You know, we can't really help you. We don't want to get involved. You know, you need to work this out for yourself. So that's just something, is just find people that you really trust, that you can really be honest with and open with. And, you know, maybe you could even develop a code word with them and say, you know, do-rag, like text message or whatever. And they're like, okay, she needs me to come get her. I'm just going to go pick her up. You know, whatever they're doing, or whatever, like whatever kind of system you guys have, you know, like how people always joke about when I'm on a bad date, I always text my friend and she pretends like she's crying and I leave. You know, you could have something like that worked out where, you know, if you are still in that situation and you aren't ready to leave, you do have someone on your side, someone that isn't going to rat you out to your warden of a boyfriend who's abusing you constantly. There's also the domestic violence hotline number, which you can Google, and they have people on there 24/7. I did it at my internship, and they just will talk to you. I mean, they will give you resources. They'll guide you on places to go. Like if you do want to seek out shelter, emergency shelter, that's an option. But a lot of people don't want to do that. And honestly, it's cold and it's scary and it's not really nice compared to where your house is, I'm sure. And it can just be it can be a really stressful thing to think about, like, oh my gosh, I got to pack up all my stuff and go live in a confidential shelter. I mean, it's crazy, you know, it's very scary. So you can just call the domestic violence hotline number. You can talk to them. They'll just listen to you and they'll say, you know, hey, you know what? There's a Haven support group in Tarpon Spring area. I'm going to give you the number for them and you can get screened and then you can go talk to them and they're local to you or whatever. That's just an example. The place that I work for, CASA, which stands for Community Action Stops Abuse, is a domestic violence agency that helps victims and their families. And we've got a shelter, we've got outreach. If you've got questions, we've got support groups, various support groups throughout the St. Pete area. There's also a thrift shop. And their number is 727-895-4912. And you can call them 24 hours a day. You can talk to them. The same thing. They have hotline advocates as well. And they will just talk you through whatever you need to talk to. I mean, it doesn't have to be like, hey, I need to be screened for shelter. It could be like, hey, I'm freaking out. My boyfriend went to work. He's going to be gone for 3 hours, and I am freaking out. Like, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do, and I can't talk to anybody. CASA can talk to you. Something else that I always suggest to my clients personally is what's called a bug out bag. And I never did that when I was in my situation because I just didn't know. I had no idea that there were even places that helped you with this because I had never obviously been in the situation before. In this bug out bag, if you have children, you could put, your kid's social security card, your social security card, any other kind of important documents. You could stash money in there to get away. Actually, now that I think about it, I think J-Lo does it in the movie Enough, where she's got all that stuff like in the bag and it's like in her trunk ready to go. Another suggestion I always give is a safety deposit box. You could, put stuff in there, and if you can't leave right away, like if there's a really bad argument and you can't leave, you're just going to wait until it's safe to leave. Then it's like, okay, I'm ready to leave. I'm just going to go to my safety deposit box real quick, pick up all my stuff and leave. And it's, it kind of like prevents him from finding anything if he were to see something or anything like that. Again, a code word is really helpful. If you have children especially, it's very helpful. Because kids, moms need a safety plan as well, but the kids need to be kind of privy to what's going on too, because if something goes down and they're little and they don't know, you got to be able to be like, we're going to get oranges. And they know that means go jump in mommy's car. We'll be, I'll be out in a second or whatever. Another thing that I always tell my clients is, and I say this 100 times a day, is to have a safety plan. And the safety plan can be specific to you. It could involve, for my example, my ex used to follow me to work, used to follow me to school, and I never thought, maybe I should take different ways to school, or maybe I should take back roads to work. Like simple things that are going to help you that, maybe aren't particular whatever, but it's things that are going to help you. Whatever's going to keep you safe is what you need to do. So if that means, we have a room that has 2 exits in it. So if, my boyfriend and I are arguing, I'm going to make sure that I get into that room and I have my back to one of the exits so that I can just sneak out one of the doors and I can book it and leave. Or it can be like, if things escalate, my safety plan is I'm going to wait till he calms down and goes to work, and then I'm going to leave and I'm going to pack all my stuff and I'm just going to be gone and I'm not going to be there. So safety planning, and that is something else that the hotline advocates can do with you as well, or that you could do with your support if you really trusted them and you wanted to share your safety plan with them. That's something you could discuss with them, to be like, what do you think I should do? Where, do you know of anywhere safe that I could go, or could I stay with you? Or, obviously you want to do something where, like in my case, I couldn't go to my best friend's house because he knew where I lived or where she lived. So he would just go there because he wasn't afraid of anything. He wasn't even afraid of a restraining order. So why would he be afraid of showing up at my girlfriend's house who's 5'3" and 100 pounds? So some advice, this is like a huge thing because I hear so much, like especially people talk about Ray Rice and they're like, his wife is so stupid. Why did she stay with him? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So some advice if you're not the victim, but you know the victim, like the victim is a friend of yours. Above all things, you need to listen to them because you don't know the situation. And sometimes I feel myself, even in my job, I feel myself getting frustrated because I'm like, just with different clients, I'm like, oh my God, like I would never do this. Like I would never do what this person's doing. What's wrong with them? But that's the thing. Like you're not them. You don't know what they're feeling. You don't know what the situation is. You don't know what they're dealing with on a daily basis. So what's most important is just to listen to them, Another thing to consider is don't ever confront her on it because maybe she's not ready to tell you. Maybe she's embarrassed. Maybe she's embarrassed to say, you know what? I'm 30 years old and my husband beats the shit out of me. Or I'm 30 years old and my husband says I'm fat, or whatever, like that's not something that you need to call her out on. Like you could, you know, speak to her and say, I'm a vault. You can always come to me if you have problems. But if she's not ready to tell you, you can't force her. And you absolutely cannot confront the abuser. Absolutely not. Plus, he'd probably lie to you anyways. At least mine would. The other thing that you need to consider going along with that is just honoring her boundaries. So, again, like when she's ready to tell you, she'll tell you. And you need to just meet her where she's at. I mean, some women aren't ready to leave. And there's an actual statistic, you can Google this, that women in domestic violence relationships, kids or not, don't leave until the seventh time. And another thing is, it's usually not even the most significant event that brings them to leave. Like, it's not like, oh, he pulled a gun on me, or, oh, whatever. It'll be like 3 times after that, because they're trying to salvage whatever. Or maybe they're just so, if it's isolated, especially, they're just like, oh my gosh, he's never hit me before. I don't think I can leave. I'm going to try and stick this out. He's really sorry, So that's just something to think about. Another thing to consider is, like, if you're on the phone with them, or if you're around and the abuser's around, like, you want to use a code word so that, especially if you're on the phone with them and they start kind of changing the way they're talking because the abuser walks in. You want to make sure that you're like, hey, is it safe to talk? Or, you know what? I can get that math homework tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Like, you don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize her safety and make her feel like she's been caught, or make him be really suspicious. For example, one time I remember I begged my best friend to go to the movies with me because I didn't want to go with him by myself. And I shouldn't have gone, but I was being pressured and we were broken up. And I was like, I'm just going to go to the movies with him. Best friend, will you please come with me? So she came with me, and she accidentally said, I can't believe you dragged me out of bed for this movie, as a joke. And I had told my crazy ex-boyfriend that she said she wanted to see the movie, so I invited her. And I remember he shot me this look like I thought she wanted to go. And the whole way home, it was like, you lied to me, you're such a liar, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I don't know why she said that. Maybe she's just tired, like, not dissing my best friend because she totally didn't mean to. But it's like, you just don't want to put them in that situation where they're... Another really good thing to do, this is both for the person who's in the situation and the friend. Something really good to do is just to document everything. Just because, especially in situations with, like, family court and stuff, you want to make sure that you have all this stuff documented, if it does go any further. Or for the case of a domestic violence injunction, if you were to testify as a character witness or anything like that, you want to make sure you document everything that you possibly can. Especially, because abusers don't want to be caught, and they don't want to admit that they're abusers, and they're never going to take accountability for what they do. I mean, hello, like, why would they admit to that? So you want to make sure that you've got proof on your end for your friend or for yourself. And also, you can always, like I said, you can always Google. There's tons of resources, tons and tons of tons. And, there's rape hotlines, there's suicide hotlines, there's domestic violence hotlines, there's child abuse hotlines. If you ever see anything domestic violence related and there's kids around, if you want to make a child abuse report, I think it's 1-800-96-ABUSE, I believe. These things are all resources. These are all things that you can call and you can say, hey, I don't know what to do. My friend, whatever, or me, my boyfriend beats me and I'm just so scared. I feel like I have no one to talk to. They will talk to you. They will talk to you. Call me. I will talk to you. If you call my work and ask to speak to Kathleen, I will speak to you. The other thing that I just want to say, just because there's so many different cultures, and I come across this a lot in my job, and, I actually took a class on cultural sensitivity and all this stuff in social work school. And there's a lot of cultures that, it's okay to be controlling if you're the husband. And it's okay to treat your wife like property. And it's okay to abuse her. And it's not really considered abuse in some cultures. It's kind of just how it is. But what I'm going to tell you is, in America, here, it is not okay. I don't care what the situation is. I don't care if she hit you first. I don't care if she cheated on you, if she has a kid with somebody else and lied to you for 20 years. I don't care. Whatever it is never okay. And this goes for men and women and homosexual couples as well. It is never okay to put your hands on another person in anger. Never, ever, 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 ever. It is never okay. So, I know I went on kind of a long tangent, but that's because it's very important to me. And I think that a lot of this stuff needs to be really put out in the open because there's just like a lot of shadow cast, I feel like, on this topic. And don't forget, be patient with your victims, if you know any, because it takes an average of 7 times to leave before she even thinks about it. Also, I hope none of you ever have to be in that situation, either as the friend or as the victim. But if you are, I just want you to know that there are places that will help you. And there's a ton of resources. And just please try not to be scared. Try to just do what's best for you and think only of yourself. Be selfish for once in your life, because in those relationships, you're not selfish. So just try and think about yourself and remember that there's people that want to help you. There's people who went to college to help you, people like me. So I hope you all have a great day, and I hope you are all respectful to each other and you remember that love shouldn't hurt and we need to stop covering up domestic violence. And I hope you guys have an awesome day.